Hello, everybody. Thanks for watching Two Minds One Podcast. In case you're interested in an audio-only version, we have it available on Apple Podcast. Link in the description below. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of Two Minds One Podcast. I'm Raymond.
I'm Nathan.
All right, so today I'm going to talk about credit cards because I'm really big into the reward points
We are both
and stuff into that.
very much credit card aficionados.
Yes.
It's something we are interested in. Personal finance in general is something we're both interested in, and credit cards happen to be a small fraction of that world. So I'm
Yeah.
sure all of you are aware credit
From-
cards have, depending on who you ask, whether a good stipulation or a bad stipulation, right? I feel like the very well-off people
it
tend to have a
depends.
more positive outlook on credit cards.
Oh, yeah.
And then in lower income areas, credit cards are viewed as this emergency thing or this almost evil, like they're trying to get you into debt. Like
Mhm.
that's the goal,
Mhm.
right? Whereas the reality lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Right? They're like anything else, they're a tool.
They're a tool that you can use.
And you can use to your advantage, right, to benefit you, as well as obviously the credit card company, because they get all the information of what you spend on and their small transaction fee when you use something to buy it.
It's the transaction fee.
It's 100% a transaction fee, especially if it's a free credit card with no annual fee.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, credit cards are tools to be used, and so they need to be viewed as such. But you said you did some research.
Let me start with how I use them. Okay, let's start with that. How we use each other. I use my credit card to maximize my either cashback and rewards. So like points.
So you're
Right?
optimizing.
Optimize. I'm trying
Gaming the system.
Yeah, I mean the extended warranty, right? So I'm gonna name my benefits. I understand the negatives. I can get into debt a lot easier.
Right.
And if something happens and I can't pay it back,
before we
get
into that, right? We just want to clarify. We will be talking about credit cards, and we will be talking about how we use them. And we are not accountants. We are not giving you financial advice.
Mm-hmm.
I want to preface this before we step into it.
This is just how we use it.
This is how we use it to people on the internet. So take our advice with a grain of salt.
Well,
and anything we say, please remember to trust but verify.
Yes.
So continue.
So I use it to pay for my vacations and stuff, to go out somewhere.
So you use it for your day-to-day expenses, is what you're saying?
I don't use my debit card at all.
Your debit card is just
I don't use
dust
it
collector.
Yeah, it just sits in my wallet for when I need to pull out cash at the bank.
And you deposit cash.
Yep, that's it. I use my credit card only.
Hear me out. So what I think you're trying to say.
I use it for I use it. An example, like when I went to Japan, I used points.
Okay, but let's maybe break down and how you get points with credit card for possible viewers that don't know. So most credit cards have some sort of, if you're most middle range to upper range credit cards have some sort of rewards program or incentive, right? So not only do you get your line of credit essentially, but you also get a sort of reward. For example, I'll use Discover. Discover It card. It's a relatively easy credit card to get. Your credit scores anywhere from like 580 to 600, and they offer you 1% cash back, right? Base, and then they offer up to 5% cash back on certain categories every quarter, so every 3 months. So that's the rewards, right? And there's other ones that offer you miles or points, right? And these points can be transferred or used to buy, for example, like Raymond said, plane tickets to go to Japan,
plane tickets,
to be used in hotels, experiences, events, or straight cash back as well.
Yeah, to pay some of your, like, you can use it to pay. I don't think that's the best value for them personally, to use them to pay for an expense that you paid on your credit card.
Yeah.
But in an emergency, right, for whatever reason, who knows, right? Every person's life is different. It could be that some expense happens, right, and you have like $2,000 worth of points in cash back. You can use 1,000 of that instead of your savings or
going into debt.
Exactly.
You want to tell us how you use your credit cards, kind of like the breakdown of what you use for what, where, kind of thing?
So I have the Sapphire Reserve card, and I use that for eating.
So dining.
Yeah, for dining out, travel expenses. So like if I rent a hotel or an Airbnb, specifically more for Airbnbs. I use more Airbnbs more. And then I use it for rental car protection, right? Okay. Because it's a perk they get with it, so I don't have to pay the rental car their protection, buy that per day insurance.
Yes.
The Sapphire Reserve card, the Chase Sapphire Reserve card has primary insurance coverage, right? And so that's basically what I use that one for. Okay. And then I have the American Express Platinum card, which I also use for traveling, more for like booking direct. When I book flights and I'm gonna pay for it, I always book directly with the airline, and so with that one I get 5 times.
Okay, now clarify for me. You're using these credit cards for these expenses, and then you're not holding the balance on them. Are you paying them off?
No, I pay off the balance every month. I don't carry a balance. Technically sometimes it's carry a balance. I pay the same balance sometimes.
Okay.
And other times I just
what you're saying is
pay it off the whole way.
If you have a credit card and you're purchasing things, do not purchase things outside of your limit.
Yes.
So for example, if you have $100 to your name, don't spend $200 on your credit card.
Basically, I use it for what my normal
debit card would be, essentially. Expenses.
Yeah, what our normal expenses would come from my income. Yeah. Right? I don't do it for anything extra. So anything that I couldn't afford if I paid it for cash, I wouldn't buy. I don't buy it, because then I get into debt.
Exactly. And the goal is not to get into debt.
Exactly, because then I don't pay any interest. At least so I get fraud protection. I get extended warranties, perks with the credit cards, and I don't have to worry about it. Right? Like somebody robbing my bank account.
Yes.
Somebody robs the credit card company, not mine.
Yes. You're using the credit card almost as a barrier to protect your information from purchasers, because I'm sure we've all had it where we use our debit card for something and then we have a large charge that we didn't do in, for example, Greece. And you're like, how the hell did someone in Greece get
or in a whole other state?
Yeah. And so it just means that somewhere along the way you bought something, a card reader stole your information and sent it out. So you can protect that by having no liability with the credit card, as you were saying, right?
Yes.
Because it's not your money, it's the credit lender's money.
Exactly. Or it also helps when, in a situation, let's say you buy a product from somebody. They send you the wrong product, or it's not the right one, and you're trying to get a refund or an exchange. But they don't answer your phone calls, they don't respond to your emails, or nothing. Right? You can tell your credit card, hey, I've tried reaching to them to settle this with them, but I don't hear anything back. I get no responses, nothing. The credit card company will refund your money, right? And deal with the merchant on your behalf.
Okay.
Yeah. I've done that. I've had that happen where I bought something, it was the wrong one, and I tried to exchange it, and they never answered the phone call. Or in a scenario where they don't want to cancel you. They try to make it really slick, hard to cancel.
Like subscription,
yeah. You got to jump through 20 hoops. You can just talk to your credit card. Hey, I've been trying to, and these people have been rejecting me, pushing me on and on and on. Okay. And they'll be like, done.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's also the added benefit of using your credit cards correctly and building your credit score.
Yes,
So
that too.
That's also important. In our modern world, your credit score is what lenders use to see how trustworthy you are, right, at lending money and paying it back.
Yes.
Right? And so having a credit card, not one, but a few, right, helps with that because your credit score is a multitude of factors. For example, it's length of history, so how long you've had your a loan or a credit card for, right? It's the average length, so if you open a new account, it shortens it.
Yes.
Right, because it averages across all your accounts. The number of accounts you have, the diversity of the accounts you have of credit, right? Your monthly payment of like how much you're on time. So if you have a streak of being on time, you want to have always be on time. Another thing that also affects your credit is, like you said, your statement balance or how much you're holding, how much you owe versus how much is available to you.
Yeah, it's a ratio to what your available credit is.
So, for example, if you have a credit card of $100, right, and you have $100 on that credit card, when they look at your credit, they're saying that you are essentially have that credit card maxed out, so that doesn't look good to the vendors.
Yeah.
Right. I believe the ratio you want to stay under is under 10% is what they recommend.
To keep a good
ratio.
Yeah, the credit ratio.
Yeah. What other factors are there? There's
a bunch of
there's a lot. I'm not going to go into every single factor here, but there's a lot, and I feel like a lot of this information that we're talking about here, it's not unavailable to people, but almost obscured or purposefully made not easy to find. Now, in recent years, it's become more common with a lot of millennials coming to age.
So, the credit score, you want to keep it, like you were saying, it's been more available nowadays, the information, because of YouTube and people with the experience. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I understand that. It's not out there. They advertise, the credit cards advertise their perks.
No, I'm not talking about the credit cards advertising their perks.
People aren't taught how to use it properly.
That is what
I'm talking about. And it is mostly in the lower middle class to poverty, right? Lower class.
What I'm talking about.
Of finances.
Information of learning how to manage your finances as a person is not something that is taught. And it is very common that finances in general be a taboo subject among lower income families and lower to middle class, as you were saying. It's not something that you get taught about. It's not something that your parents tell you. Not something that's taught about in school, or to matter of fact, even talked about in school.
I mean,
we live here. We live in California.
They don't talk about finance at all.
It's required to take the course economics, right?
Yeah.
Where they talk to you about the economy, they talk to you about what a dollar is and how your reserve currency works and all of that, right? But I believe that's only a fraction of what is required to truly understand economy and personal finance, and that should be
economy and personal finance are different.
No. But it's your personal economy.
Yeah.
It's economy is both macro and micro.
Yeah.
Right. So both large and small.
Yeah, so but they don't focus on.
They don't focus on you,
and it's hard to.
And they focus on businesses.
It's hard. It's hard when you're learning economy to be able to figure out that it also applies to your personal life.
That's why they should make it more relevant to you and teach you how things.
But sometimes it feels like they don't want you to learn that stuff.
Yes,
right.
It feels
because why wouldn't it be in the school?
Made very readily available. Yeah. So I think that's definitely somewhere where it is a requirement or something that we can improve upon, because you have kids, honestly, going from high school directly into college, right? That's what they advertise. Go to school, do good, go to college, get a degree. That's what they tell you to do.
Yeah.
And that works for some people, right? What they don't tell you is that when you go from high school to college, there's a lot of stuff that changes.
Oh, yeah.
right? You're not fully adulting yet, right? But you're adulting light. You're like the preview.
Mm-hmm.
You got bills to pay.
Well,
you got gas.
It depends.
Depends. Most people.
It depends.
Most people.
Yeah.
Right? You have loans. Most people don't get scholarships and or fully funded, grants to go to school. So you have loans.
Yeah.
Right? And before you take a loan, they should have you take 3 to 4, 5, 6 hour class on finance so you understand how your loan works, what kind of loan you're getting, what this means, how the payoff is going to look like, all of these things, right? And I'm not talking a course where they stick you in front of a monitor, right? I'm talking about in-person class because it's very...
You're talking about a class with a financial advisor, maybe.
Yes. It's going to tell you, hey, you need to understand you're accepting this loan and this loan is going to require X, Y, and Z, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain loans and or scholarships, for example, right, that require you to maintain a certain GPA or a certain status, right? Things of that nature need to be held, and people need to understand. It's all too often that young people get into extreme debt going to university, and not because inherently they do want to, because they don't seek out and learn it, but it shouldn't be it's their fault because they don't know what they don't know. It should be more of, yes, it is their fault, but the answer isn't to tell them to get better. The answer is to guide them to get better. And I know it's a hot take. A lot of people say, well, no one was there to help me figure it out. Nobody was there to teach me X and Y. And yes,
but some people taught that argument to people doesn't matter to me because some people taught you something.
Exactly. And it's due to others which you wish,
had been done to you.
Exactly. You wish someone had been there to help you, not to do the work for you, but to guide you in the right direction, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are that. No one helped me, so no one should help. I feel that's very...
It's very big.
No, I feel like that's more of a revengeful attitude, not a positive, better attitude. You don't...
Almost spiteful?
Yeah, it's spiteful. It's like, I had to struggle for it, so they have to.
Right. And we're not saying...
It's not fair if I had to struggle for it.
Yes. And unfortunately, life's not fair.
Life's not fair.
You don't choose where you're born. You don't choose a lot of stuff about yourself. But
those people, they don't put themselves in the shoes of, let's say that's your son. You're too busy to teach them things you've learned of finance and like that. Then you see them struggling and you're like, why aren't you struggling? You didn't see me struggle. Should have learned it. Right? When eventually you're going to realize you could have helped them.
Yeah.
You could have guided them better.
And it's not like we're advocating for removing the struggle, right? You're not going to pay their bills for them, right? But you're going to teach them.
No,
at least you're going to do the minimum of teaching them what it's like to be responsible and how you should and shouldn't manage your money, and what are priorities and what are not priorities.
Well, like we talked about leadership, right?
Yes.
It is guidance. A great coach is a great leader because he doesn't just tell you what to do. A coach doesn't just tell you. A great coach puts you in situations that you might encounter on the field, right? When you're playing the sport.
Yeah.
Okay.
He also guides you on how to
practice. Yes, how to solve that on your own, but with a little bit of help, little hints here and there, but making you think about it.
Yes.
That is
right
what you're talking about.
And I do
that
agree.
Is what you're talking about.
You can tell someone this is how you should spend your money, but you have no control of how they're going to spend their money. So now if you told 100%. them, if you told them, you shouldn't spend your money going out and partying all the time, but they still go out and party all the time, and then they're always strapped for cash, that's their issue now.
They have chosen to learn the struggle, the hard way. Yes.
The struggle, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't be taught, right?
Very true.
So that's our spiel on that. Neither here nor there, just something we wanted to advocate for that we feel is lacking in especially American school or education system.
Yeah.
But back to credit cards, you're saying you did some digging in a little bit of history on credit cards.
Oh yeah, so it's a little bit of history. It's funny. I mean, the credit system has been around for like 5,000 years, right?
I think the IOU system.
Yeah, it's been around for like 5,000 years.
I believe it started.
Well, because farmers needed to. It started with farming because like we always needed to grow food, right? So it started with farming. They needed to get into debt to buy the stuff to grow the food
to pay it
sell it, then pay the debt, and then keep the profit.
Yeah, and then rinse and repeat.
And repeat. So that's how it started.
The IOU system also started with the Mesopotamian. Hey, I'm gonna trade this to you, but you have to wait because it needs to grow up. Like I'm gonna give you 10 chickens,
but I need to raise the 10 chickens.
I need to raise the 10 chickens first from chicks.
Because I only have two.
But I need to borrow the seeds, right?
Yeah, I need to borrow the food
so I can raise
to feed them. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So credit cards are kind of funny. They started like the first sort of thing. There was I think it was the Roman Empire. I think it was there was the credit coin. Yes, what they called it. Something along the lines of the credit coin. Mm-hmm. Right, and it was used as you give a coin, you owe them. Right, a credit. You owe them something for something.
Yes, like someone did a favor for you.
And then you repay them, you get the coin back.
Yes.
Right. But the first closed loop credit card was the Diners Club.
So,
credit card.
The Diners Club wasn't a credit card, but it was the first instance of revolving closed loop credit transfer utilization essentially. Mm-hmm. So the way the Diners Club started, I believe it started in the early 50s, and it was essentially the idea of someone saying, "Hey, I want to eat out, but I don't have the money to pay it right now."
No, so it started with the guy who went to eat, forgot his wallet. They couldn't pay, but wanted to avoid washing the dishes to pay it off. He wanted to avoid the free labor. Well, not free, but free to him because he had the money to pay. So he made a deal with the diner and promised to come back and pay with an exchange. He gave him something, right? The next day. And he did. And then he ended up making a deal with the restaurant owner at the time to continue that. And he brought his friends, and then it slowly grew to 200 people that started doing that. And then from there, kind of got into a card that if you had this card, you can do an IOU at this restaurant.
A membership card.
Yes. And then that grew to 42,000 people.
That became the Diners Club card.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Which you can go to restaurants.
Which was more of like
IOUs.
More of like a membership style thing.
Yeah, you have to become a membership to be able to give an IOU to restaurants that are within the Diner Club program.
The family of that program. Yes. So almost like a rewards program for continuously dining there.
It's a reward you get to give IOUs and come back and pay it back later. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I do believe that eventually slowly evolved into the first charge card.
Yeah, so the first, I don't know if it was, I know American Express and Bank of America came out with the first credit cards.
So,
because of that,
there's a difference.
In 1959.
So, American Express, fun fact, originally started as a transportation industry, which then moved from transportation to money ordering and checks.
Well, the reason they moved to that was because a lot of their employees were immigrants and they needed to send money overseas to their families.
Yes.
Right?
And so
they started this program for their employees so that their employees can send money overseas. They started a money order.
Yeah, money order transfer.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Kaiser.
Yeah.
Insurance company.
Yeah, started as a mining company.
So Kaiser is actually a mining company.
It started as a mining company
for the gold rush. Right? California, Nevada. And what happened is all these miners started getting injured, so they started offering their Kaiser insurance to them where they would just essentially have a hospital.
They built a hospital close to the miners
and they would
to make it faster, to get them treated.
So that they could turn around profits faster. They realized
they made more money
with the hospital than the mining, so they transferred away from that, right? Kind of similar to American Express. But continuing, American Express started as transportation, then they moved on to money ordering, and they figured out that was profitable when they did it.
Way more profitable.
And then they came out with the first charge card, which is
first plastic charge card in 1959.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So that was you would consider one of the editions of the first credit card, right? Because there are credit cards that have a limit, and there are charge cards that American Express has that are essentially credit cards, but they don't hold the limit.
They don't have a limit. Yeah. So technically, the first credit card was Bank of America.
Yes.
Credit card. That had a limit.
America credit card. Fun fact.
But they came out the same year.
Yeah.
They came out the same year.
Founded in California.
Well,
Bank of America.
Test run.
No, Bank of America was founded in California.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know that part. Mm-hmm. So correct. So founded in test run with a few Californian customers.
In Fresno.
Valued Californian customers, yes. So, but they came out in the same year. American Express came out with a charge card, and Bank of America came out with a credit card.
Yep.
The difference is that at the time when American Express came out with the charge card, it only went to high value clients.
Yes.
Because it didn't have a payment plan. You didn't have a minimum payment. You had was higher. Whatever you charged on it, you had to pay it off the following month.
Yes.
Okay, at the due date. With the Bank of America, it was a credit card with a limit, and you had minimum payments.
Yeah, with a minimum payment. Yeah.
Now, that didn't work out great for them the first time.
Well,
high fraud.
Hear me out. It did work out relatively well. You're right.
It did, but they had a lot of fraud.
I think it was over 20%.
Yeah,
fraud and default rate on the first credit card. Yes. However, the amount of money they made from other people using it proved to be a stunning success.
No, it proved to be worth the hassle of figuring out how to do it correctly.
Yes.
Yeah. So then they opened another department called Bank Americard. I'm sure some of us are old enough to remember that.
Bank Americard.
Right, which later separated from Bank of America and is now known as Visa.
It became Visa.
Yes.
They
changed their name to Visa. It is now Visa, which is where you see the number one
most used style debit card, credit card, or processor, payment processor.
Yup.
Right? Mm-hmm. Which I think it's funny how almost intertwined everything is. But it's crazy how Bank of America was the first one to have a credit card. Right?
Yeah. It was.
And then, following the birth of the credit card from Bank of America, other banking institutions started doing this as well.
You had Chase.
So, hear me out.
JP Morgan.
Pacific Union, right? Actually, a train car company had wanted to get in on this banking, so they bought out a banking division, right? I don't remember the name of the smaller banking division, but this banking division ended up releasing their own card, right? This card was called the Master Banking Something Card. Later on,
they created. So it was TransUnion and a bunch of other banks that joined together and created this Master Credit Union
card.
Or something
Credit
like
Union
that.
Card.
Yeah.
And eventually, that became known as MasterCard.
Yeah.
Right? The other second largest
rival
processor to Visa. Right? It's crazy to see how you have two transportation industries that converted themselves into essentially banking institutions or credit loaning institutions, because you have American Express, which started as a transportation, and TransUnion, right, which also eventually opened up their own FICO score version called the TransUnion score, right?
That's your TransUnion score nowadays,
which is your credit score.
Yes. So
after you create the credit card, you have to figure out who is and who is not a good person to give this very powerful tool to, because you don't want that high default rate. So, back in the day, you had your reputation, right? You talk, and very much how you presented yourself in word of mouth.
Yes.
But in the 1960s, right, we're already a majorly populated and incorporated population. So they had to figure out a new way to develop your trustworthiness and how willing you are. So
that you can do transactions between many jurisdictions or businesses. Right. Yeah.
And so what happened was this guy, this engineer, right, and a mathematician, their names do escape me currently, I believe it was Franco and Isaac, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they developed this way to.
It was Billy and Isaac, I think it was.
No, it's Isaac and the guy's name started with an F, like Frank or something like that.
Yeah.
The long story short, they got together and developed this system to figure out how trustworthy a person is to lend money to, right? Essentially, and they started this business called.
They found a better way to do it. Actually, there was multiple scoring systems before them that just didn't stick.
Yes. Well, there was multiple banks around the world that didn't stick until one did. Right?
Yeah.
There's always the trial and error phase.
Yeah.
And so, I believe they call it like the Frank and Isaac Corporation or something along that lines, right? And they shorthanded it to FICO, your FICO score.
Yep.
That's the birth of your FICO score. And anybody who knows or has purchased a car, a house, or any large loan or anything on credit knows that your FICO score is an important score that the lender looks at to see how trustworthy you are to be lent money, right? And so, funny enough, this FICO score was birthed by them, by an engineer and a mathematician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wild. You want to know something funny?
What's up?
The magnetic strip on the back.
So, fun fact: credit cards originally didn't have magnetic strips.
Yeah, they didn't have anything. Like they had to punch the numbers in, and
it was very much like a check, and they had to punch the numbers in.
So it was IBM trying to figure out.
It was an IBM engineer, right?
Yeah, it was an IBM engineer trying to figure out how to stick a magnetic strip because they knew that they already used magnetic strips on other things to carry information.
They used it for for example, floppy disks and things of that nature.
So they were trying to figure out how to. They wanted to do that, put your information on the magnet strip for the credit card, right? And an engineer, Forrest Perry, that worked at IBM at the time, were trying to figure this out. For IBM, it was IBM trying to figure this out. They just couldn't figure it out because they were like, "How would you stick a magnetic strip to them?" When one day, Perry came home. So the story is right.
The legend has it,
right? That he took it home and talked to his wife about this problem he was having. He's venting. And she said, she suggested, why not try to iron the magnetic strip onto the card?
Like a physical iron? Like
ironing your clothes. So, he tried it, and the iron proved hot enough to put the magnetic strip onto the card.
And so then
that's how they started, soon they adopted that invention and started adding the magnetic strip.
That's how the magnetic strip was born, huh?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, to keep in line with your fact of magnetic strip.
That was crazy, right?
In the 80s, I believe it's 80s or 70s, France, since the credit card is taking over the world and very common, they had French banks that are also doing similar things of nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, this magnetic strip business is too, and getting your information stolen is too much.
It's
secure enough. And they wanted to make it more secure because fraud rates were still significantly high. So what they did they were like, well, we have these new things called microchips. Why don't we just embed a microchip onto credit cards, and that way we can know, we'll know the transaction of who did it, right? And so in France, they embedded the first microchips onto your plastic credit cards, right? And fun fact, France was also the country that developed the insert chip instead of swipe for credit cards. Same idea, but just they're like, swiping's too long. What if we just insert it? Because eventually, as any of you know, older, and you've had a credit card for a long time or a debit card, your magnetic strip starts to fade.
Yeah, it wears out.
It wears out. Just because it's wear and tear, as you swipe it gets scratched, and as you swipe it, or your wallet, or you slide it, or you just you wear and tear of items, which is why your credit cards have an expiration date, right, and your debit cards have an expiration date, right, and which is why they get replaced every so often.
Yep.
Right. Similar to your driver's license, which also has a magnetic strip. That technology took over a lot of cards and badging. So
I'm sure it's a good way to have information.
I'm sure IBM made a lot of money off of that.
Yeah.
But So France is actually the country who developed the insert chip for your credit cards, right? And I believe it was in the 90s, 94. They developed that, right? And so you have the whole French to thank for insertion. And then eventually, as we know, if anybody have newer debit card, the insert chip and swipe became tap. And the way that happened was they know that the credit card machines communicate via RF signals, so radio waves.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, what if we can get the chip to emit a radio wave when it receives a certain radio wave, right? So almost energizing the chip inside to receive, right? Like, so when the radio wave comes out as a wave and it hits the chip and then it reflects off, and that reflection of the chip gives the information, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is you have tap to pay. Tap to pay was born in the early 2010s, right?
Okay.
And so that has been the latest way of, paying with credit cards. The reason why is because, of course, safety. That once people figured out you can steal your money with the swipe, and they started figuring out that you can still steal it when you chip.
Yep.
Right. Well, the less time they have interacting with the card, the less likelihood they are to steal your information.
The benefit of the tap also is that it gives a different card number when you tap.
Really?
Than your actual card number, yeah.
So you never notice.
You notice when you add, so it's like a dummy number.
It's like an auto-generated number.
Yeah. So when you add your card to your Apple Pay.
Yes.
Or your Google or your Samsung Pay. That number is different than your card number.
Yes, it is.
And there's a reason for that.
It's so protection. That they can't steal it.
Yes.
Interesting. So give you almost like a pseudo digital card that is linked to your card.
And so when you tap with your card, it does the same thing.
Interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
The more you know, the more you know.
You know, so also, the reason I think I want to get back to the fear that people have with credit cards might be due also to their beginning.
To their inception?
Yeah, to their inception. Because when credit cards first started, they didn't have any standards. So there was no terms, no conditions, and no APR. So everybody said there was not like their APR was whatever they wanted. Then there was also the problem of they'd give credit limit astonishingly high to people who
did not deserve
could not afford to pay that.
Yeah.
And people would rack in and then charge crazy debt. Which is why we ended up with a bunch of acts. So we had in 1994 we had the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, right? Because there was a lot of discrimination too, when who gets a credit card and who doesn't, right? Who's allowed to have it. There was the Truth in Lending Act also, right? And that one stopped credit card companies from raising limits, right? Too high for users who can't pay.
So like almost extortion.
Yes.
It's like temptation.
It's like,
well, here's more money.
You make $10,000. Don't worry, I'll give you $30,000 credit limit.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way they're gonna be able to pay that back if they use all $30,000.
So they added the temptation.
Yeah.
And that's where they default
and it protected users also from having credit card companies open cards on their behalf. Without them knowing.
So essentially, we had the era of rules
Fraud.
and regulations that were starting, right? Well, speaking of that,
hold on, there was one more. What's called CARD, and it's an acronym for Credit Card Accountability, Responsibility, and Disclosure Act. Right? It protects users from credit card companies charging interest rates on existing accounts that you have open but aren't using. Yeah, and they reduced the over limit fees because they were astonishing.
Interesting.
And it drastically reduced them because they were really high.
Well, speaking of credit cards and American Express, American Express actually was the first credit card to offer a rewards and or membership program.
Really?
Yes. So.
Okay.
The rewards program and loyalty program model has been around for thousands of years, right? Repeat customers back in the day.
In one form or another.
Right? And so, the first instance of, this membership program that catered to a credit card was American Express, and what they called their membership miles.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you use your credit card, you get membership miles, right? Transportation industry, like, yeah, we can do mile stuff, right? Which then later evolved into just the membership, the membership points, right? So every other credit card company took interest into this because it's another incentive upon to use it, right? Mm-hmm. Because if there's no incentive to use your credit card, then there's no reason
for people to use their credit card over their debit card.
If it's just equivalent, right?
Yeah.
They'll only use it every now and then when they're like, oh, I don't have enough money to pay for this. Payday's on Friday and it's Tuesday. Let me just pay for my credit card, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so now the membership and points model has become the standard for all credit cards. So most credit cards, big lenders, have a rewards program, points program, cashback now. Something to incentivize people to use their credit card on top of just it existing, being an easy access line of credit.
Yes, other than just an access. So the reason for this is I didn't know that American Express was the first one. That's interesting. But I can understand, and now it makes sense as to, because I know that credit card companies actually don't make a lot. Don't make most of their money does not come from the interest rate people pay on past due, on balances carried.
Yeah.
Okay? It's actually from the fees of swiping the card.
Yes.
That is their number one revenue.
Mm-hmm.
By a large margin.
Yes.
And so they noticed that in order to get people to use their cards to get that fee,
they noticed that they made more money when people just used the card, paid it off, but they get the money off the fee. The transaction fee was more, right? So they said, well, if we change our business model, instead of trying to get higher interest rate people when they carry a balance, if we have, offer that more incentive to use the card, we'll get more profit.
People to swipe.
Yes.
So that's your rewards program. And what pays for your rewards program is the swipes.
Yep. Is your swipe every time you use it.
Yep. That's what pays for it.
Interesting how businesses change so quickly.
Oh, right? Man. It wasn't even that long ago that they were like in 1970 they were forced to the Fair Credit Act forced credit card companies to report your credit scores and all your information correctly.
Yes.
And accurately,
yes.
Because there was some shady stuff going on. They're not reporting.
Well, this is when you get into credit cards and loans and things like that, you get to the financial industry, and the financial industry has always been very murky.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, there's a lot of
loan sharking and
a lot of interesting decisions being made with people's money, banks kind of holding a lot of power, and things of that nature.
We can get into that some other time.
Right. We've discussed that briefly in other episodes, but credit cards in general have had this interesting history that brings us up to now, where credit cards have become almost like a fad, and the card that everyone blames for all other companies upping their membership rewards and points, like sign-on bonus and things of that nature, is actually the Chase Sapphire Reserved card.
Oh yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, the Chase Sapphire Reserved card, Chase is a subsidiary of J.P. Morgan, which is the third largest bank in the world, and it became the third largest bank in the world after the 2008 financial crisis because it bought up many of the other smaller, moderately sized banks.
So who's bigger than it? Because I know J.P. Morgan is number one in America as the largest bank.
Oh, but in the world, I think I couldn't be able to tell you. You have the iPad in front of you.
I would have to look. Let's see that.
But
let's find that.
The Chase Sapphire card is the card that offered so much reward bonus that the first 6 months that Chase offered the card, they actually lost revenue because of the rewards points and how much they were giving away. I think it was 150,000 points for spending $3,000 or something of that nature, and that was equivalent to like $2,500, and so that card became very, very popular and very useful, and it forced people like American Express, Capital One, to just up their offers and what they're offering, because it didn't make sense to use other cards if this card is just giving you everything you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're actually credited with causing this new wave of updated change of credit card membership points and fees, and it's also corresponds in line with the wave of internet influencers / people bringing awareness to financial freedom and financial liberties, and personal finance has become a large thing, not in part to that credit card, but the fact that there's a lot of happenings and changings, right? And I believe there's a lot of people that, like we said, think that personal finance is something that should be taught. And so they've taken it upon their own hands, right, to change that. But I do know that Chase lowered the limit on the Sapphire Reserve card multiple times. It went from like 150 to 100,000 to like 90,000 to 80,000. And now I think the standard sign-on bonus is 60.
Yes.
Which is a far cry from its original, I believe, 150,000. But as I was saying, JP Morgan is the third largest bank. I think the other two larger ones might be, I don't know, I know HBN or something like that. There's a bank that is, used globally. I forgot the name. It starts with an H. It's like HBNC or something like that. But yeah. So if you're going to take anything away from this episode, is that credit cards are important tools to be used. If you're going to be using them, you need to understand, as you said, the rules and stipulations of your credit card, the fees, right?
You got to be really strong-willed.
Yeah, because it's very easy to just use it on the credit card and not pay attention, right? So they did a survey recently, and they said that the number one reason why people even get a new credit card, right, is the sign-on bonus and the thereafter perks of using the credit card. Like, for example, purchase protection, no liability fraud protection, right? Free credit score checks, right? Cash back, special offers. For a lot of time, a long time, special deals with, when they partner with certain companies. For a long time, American Express was not really accepted a lot of places. It's very hit or miss.
Yeah.
But
because they charge a larger fee than everyone.
But one of the main reasons why the very wealthy used and liked American Express was their top tier concierge system. So for those of you that don't know, American Express, back in the day when the internet was significantly less easy to navigate, or just less applicable to everyone and less, available, American Express had the best concierge system. So if you were a customer, you could call them and say, "Hey,
I need this. I
need you to book me a flight from here to here on this day. I want to land around this time, and I need you to book me a rental car, et cetera, and this and that.
Hotel, everything.
And a hotel and everything." And they'd be like, "Okay, sir, you got it." And they'd book it and mail you the information.
Oh, they would. They also
do call you back and be like, "Hey, even to this day, if you call a restaurant that says it doesn't have any reservations, right? You call your American Express agent and you call them up and say, "I want to get a reservation for this restaurant this date." They pull some strings, they do some black magic. And if they can get your reservation, they'll get your reservation. Yeah. But American Express's concierge system is not as potent
as it used to
be, because the world is so much more interconnected now, and those like special connections are less special that they had. And so they were really, really good at offering that service, which is ease of use service to a lot of their luxury clients. So when you're a multimillionaire, that ease of use and not having to do things yourself, it becomes very, easy to use and, and nice. You're not paying extra for that, right?
Yeah.
And then they also have, their special cards that they offer to their really, really wealthy, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody
the American Express Black Card.
Centurion card, actually, is what it's called.
The Centurion card that has no limit.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, but the fees are ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like a $10,000 just to sign up and then $5,000 annual fee.
Yes. But I mean,
that's
you buy a yacht on that thing.
That's the real concierge service.
Yes.
On that
like
one.
You're buying, you got
yeah.
To be willing to pay the monthly or the yearly expense of $5,000 just to hold a credit card.
$5,000 got to be a penny to you.
Yeah.
In the way of spending.
It's got to be $5.
Yeah, it's nothing. So, before we end the episode, I just want to let you know, because I am interested in the number one bank.
Yes.
And it caught me by surprise. It's ICBC.
I've never heard
which
of them.
Stands for Industrial and Commercial Bank of China Limited.
Oh.
They are the largest in asset.
In assets.
JP Morgan is actually the fifth largest bank in the world. Yes. They have a total asset of $6.1 trillion.
So
I think it was the top 3 in the world are China banks. Yes. So it's the China Construction Bank, number 3, the Agricultural Bank of China.
I agree that those are the facts, but there is something that we do need to amend when saying those banks are the largest.
Oh. That's based on assets.
On assets, right?
And assets can be inflated.
Assets can be highly inflated.
Yes.
Right? So that is an asterisk to that. And the second thing is that those banks are not private institutions separate from their government.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, they have the added benefit of having the government's leeway and banks for super low interest rate or almost no interest rate loans from the government yeah. or money printing, etc., etc.
So technically, if you want to look at it as in privately owned banks, not governmentally owned banks.
Yes.
Okay. The largest one in the world would be JP Morgan Chase and Co. They would be number 1 because that's
who's number 4. He's the first 3 are Chinese.
Bank. Oh, number 4 is also China. The Bank of China.
The bank of the country.
Yeah. Yeah. Bank of the country. So then Bank of America is actually second.
Wow.
Privately, Bank of America is the second.
Interesting. Don't tell me Wells Fargo is the third.
No, it wasn't Wells Fargo. In private banks, right? In
private banks, yes.
It's actually Mitsubishi UFC Financial Group.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a Japanese bank.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So, not to discredit anything from the Chinese banks, but they do have a significant...
They're not a private bank.
They're a significant leg up. They're owned by the government
They're protected and backed by the government because they are...
They're
closer, the way China works...
They're closer to the Fed than a bank.
Yeah. The way China works is everything is owned by China.
And once it becomes large enough and important enough to the government that it can derail or rail in their plans, it becomes part of the simulation.
Yeah.
Just like,
they take ownership of it.
Just like, for example, interesting topic. We'll discuss on this later, but China has had many of their billionaires magically or mysteriously disappear. President of Alibaba.
Oh, yeah. I heard this. This is a good topic for another time. So,
not saying that they're making people disappear. I'm just saying that
there's a coincidence.
There is a coincidence
of their billionaires disappearing.
Yes. And why?
For what reasons?
And their companies hold too large of a market capital when they try to change or do things that are go against their regime. Their
plans.
Their plans. So that is something for another day. But if you're gonna take anything away from this, Credit cards are useful assets and tools to build your credit and use them for your personal benefit of getting points, cashbacks, right, and things of that nature.
If you don't feel comfortable with the credit card and you feel you would get in debt, then don't. And it might be best for you to be careful.
Yes.
With credit cards. We're not saying every person's financial situation is different.
Yes.
And every financial path is different. There are people that prefer the no debt. Mark Cuban, no credit cards. And what's his name?
Mr. Wonderful?
No, not Mr. Wonderful. The other guy that has a show. Dave Ramsey. Also, there's no debt. Pay everything cash.
Yes.
Right? So there's other ways. But it's for you to analyze and make a decision. Because you, right, on your financials, you believe you are strong enough
and you have a good grasp of understanding where your money is going.
Yes.
Right? Then a credit card is a very useful asset to not only build your credit, but helpful, even if it's, you use your credit card, for example, just for gas.
Yep.
Right?
3%
American Express offers a credit card that's just for gas. And you can use it just for your gas, and you pay off your gas because it's something you pay off anyways.
Most banks do. Right. Chase, Bank of America have one.
And you can do that, build credit, and reap the rewards of points and use those points however you see fit, whether it be for hotels, transportation, flights, cashback, etc. But we hope you guys learned something. Once again, I will preface this one more time. We are not, financial experts, and we're not giving you financial advice.
We're not giving any advice.
We're not giving any advice here. It's just what we do, how we see it, and how we interact with credit cards, and an interesting history of how they were born and the little tidbits of, where a lot of these larger corporations like FICO scores, credit cards came from and how they started.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, guys, thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Yep, we'll see you next time.